disgraced and demonic pedophile priest out of Boston who was responsible for hurting over 101 children. All they did was transfer him to another place to hurt more children. Oh, and children did reach out to their parents. They begged for help. DCF didn't show up. CPS didn't show up. Why not? They got a letter in the mail from the church saying, "We're handling it internally. God bless you." After decades of cover-ups, hundreds of victims, he finally gets arrested. Oh, but he only gets sentenced to 14 years. But during those 14 years, he would not make it home. See, an inmate in that prison who was sexually assaulted when he was a young child, who said he just wants to go with his father, they didn't believe him. And it kept happening and happening until he became a murderer and sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. Well, when he got into the dorm and realized this guy was in here, this piece of shit pedophile priest, he learned how to pick the locks, watch the guards, every movement they made, until it was time to strike. He got into protective custody, picked the lock, jammed the lock, and as soon as the priest came into the cell, the door wouldn't be able to open for another 10 minutes, as the COs could not do it manually or electronically. He'd be beaten to death, ribs broken, orbital bones broken, teeth knocked out, head slammed into the ground, all while he's saying, "This is for the kids," before he took a sock and strangled him to death. Let's get into it. Disgraced pedophile John J. Gogan was ordained in Boston in 1962. Of course, he was celebrated as gentle and kind. He was already the man that the archdiocese would spend decades protecting. Internal church files later showed that complaints dated back to the 1960s. Each one handed the same way: the problem handled internally. Priests reassigned to a new parish. They just said that children were getting raped and molested and they handled it internally. Why weren't the police there? Why wasn't DCF there, CPS? Oh, that's right. Was it an entity more powerful than y'all? Or is this the entity y'all work for? I don't get it twisted. You know, I love all religions. I'm a Christian. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But we all know people use good things to do evil things. Just like in prison. I never went to church in prison because that's where the most amount of just dope and crazy shit went on. Also, for the record, when the parents made complaints and everything was going on, they were calling the police, DCF, they said we're handling it internally. They didn't put this in here. They also received a letter in the mail from that church saying, "God bless." They go send them to another church to go hurt as many children as possible. They're giving these priests more leeway than they did the CIA agents during the Contra War. Outsiders, he was a holiness and a collar. To insiders, he was a liability they had to manage. And by the late 1990s, the Boston Globe would uncover more than 100 more victims. The pattern wasn't confusion, it was control. Inside the Boston Archdiocese, bishops treated risk the way corporations treated lawsuits. They relied on settlements, money, quiet transfers, psychologists paid to write the priest had improved. Imagine that. Saying a priest that has hurt hundreds and hundreds of children and women, who else knows how many more, and a man that was sworn under the oath of God to protect, provide, to do the righteous things, to sacrifice, has improved? No, there is no improvement. However, as we'll find out later, he did get somewhat of an improvement. Superiors, including Cardinal Bernard Law, signed off on every move. Each reassignment produced new victims and thicker files. Church's language became its armor. Sin renamed as boundary issues. Abuse disguised as pastoral concerns. It was an institution more afraid of scandal than evil. Silence was strategy. I mean, I really think this is the church that DCF reports to. Can you imagine that? Reassigning them, everyone knows what's going on, and nobody gives a fuck. I know men of all religions, because in prison you meet every single type of religion you can imagine, and they would kill everybody for what they did to the children and the disgrace they did to their religion. Henrietta du Sword, she would break the silence. Her letter to the Cardinal Law described what Father Hogan had done to her sons and nephews. It was polite, desperate, and ignored. She received a thank you note and the promise of prayer. Now, let me tell y'all something. Imagine you're trying to do the right thing because you know if you snap, whatever, you'll go to prison, but what will happen to your kids? Probably be these piece of shits that are in these institutions that are godly people raising them. You know what I mean? It's wolves in sheep clothing. You know, there's some righteous people of all religions that you can trust and will guide you all the way. Just because they have a cloth on does not mean they're righteous. If you're looking for the most pedophiles, where do we find them? Working at the schools, working at the karate places. I mean, why not? Now remember, DCF will come to your house if your kid falls down, scrapes her leg. But a parent is begging for help, writing letters, and they say, we're handling it internally. We'll pray for you. DCF doesn't even get involved. Wait till you hear why. She saw him serving children in another parish. She went public. Her courage turned a parish secret into a statewide scandal. The church lost control of the narrative the moment a mother refused to be silent. This is what I tell y'all every time. You must fight for those children no matter what. I don't care who calls you crazy, how many times you get just deterred by the system or these bureaucracies because they want to break you. But you can't break, because in the end, when you expose them all, when they have to sit there and they got to go to prison and they got to run into a monster like me, because let me tell you, many men like me and many more scary men like me, we are a predator's monster. I understand, you want to do something to protect your child, but leaving them with whoever they got is even worse. So play chess. I promise you, it'll all work out. But be vigilant and never let one thing slide. Thank you note? Nah, it's time for war. In 2002, court ordered forced release of 10,000 church records. The Boston Globe Spotlight team read every line, tracing decades of cover-ups. They found bishops who wrote, "Father appears better." Then they even resigned him to new victims. The story would shatter Boston's faith in its own church. Of course, Cardinal Law resigns within a year. Disgraced priest, now exposed, became the public face of clerical abuse. Wow, it only took hundreds and hundreds of victims and people complaining and kids getting hurt and all the trauma. Who knows what else went on for all the years before that. And the guy resigns. It just shows you this wasn't one guy, a bad apple. No. If I work with somebody and I found this out, I would cut his throat right there on the spot. Like, if I knew you just got transferred here to hurt other children, I knew the cops weren't coming. I knew nobody's coming. A mom can't even get any help. I got you, Mom. In early 2002, a Massachusetts jury convicted the piece of shit of indecent assault on a child under 14. That's just one case. But he was only sentenced to 9 to 10 years with 6 years to serve mandatory before he's eligible for parole. See, let me explain something to y'all. I'm not proud of this. I was wrong. But I spent all of my 20s in prison for robbing a drug dealer's stash house. 100% I was wrong. But nobody got hurt, thank God. And I was gone for all of my 20s. This man hurt children. Got off on it. The same place people think they could send their children to become better. He was using that and then disappearing to do it again. It's a perfect example of the war between good and evil. He's a wolf in sheep clothing. They enter our schools, they enter our doctors, our police forces, our churches. When all else fails, the only defense against violent, evil people is righteous and good people that are more skilled at violence and have a righteous cause. Remember that. He enters the Supermax prison, state-of-the-art facility, cameras, all types of electronic doors. He would run into an inmate named Joseph Lee Druce, serving life for murder. Psych reports called him volatile, obsessed with punishing predators. He studied the guards' routines and waited for weakness. Weeks prior to the killing of the child molester, Druce told other inmates, "I'm gonna do it for the kids." They thought it was all talk. Yet, he was methodical. He crafted a wedge from a paperback book and noted that weekend staff were lighter. August 23rd, 2003 became the day. Only one officer worked the tier during lunch, the gap he needed. Druce slipped from his cell into Gilligan's and jammed the door track before it shut. When the lock engaged, they were sealed together. Inside cell 2, there were no witnesses. Druce tied the pedophile's wrist with cloth, used a roll of sock as a ligature, and pressed until the movement stopped. Struck him repeatedly, chest, ribs, neck, for 7 minutes. Officers tried to open the jammed door. Finally gained entrance. The disgraced priest lay motionless. Killer Druce told them calmly, "I did it for the kids. Stay out, stay free, us, and leave our kids alone."